Emerging Asia is a very interesting case because what we see in emerging Asia is, well, a bunch of economies, and by that, the ones I'm referring to are Hong Kong, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, that for many years were referred to as the Asian tigers because you can see what growth rates were like in these countries. They were very, very healthy for many decades in a row. And now the countries that are taking over in terms of rapid growth rates are India and China. So for China these days, when its growth rate is under 10%, it seems rather modest. So one message that comes out of this picture is as economies mature, growth rates tend to converge. So you can see that 3.5% or something, 4.5% maybe, are where these economies are operating at, as opposed to the 6-7% growth rates of the 60s and 70s. And then we turn to Africa, which is a very sad tale. Africa has had a lot of civil wars, a lot of strife between countries as well, and it shows up in these growth rates. So you can see that growth rates have been extremely volatile, varying from almost -4% or so to maybe 4 or 5% positive. Countries like Madagascar, where's Madagascar, have had chronically negative growth rates. So these are economies that have just become poorer and poorer for the last 40 years or 50 years. A country like Somalia, you can see that it shrank very rapidly in the 90s. So it took about 16.7 years for GDP per capita to fall by half. And now it's growing, but at a very, very slow rate. In fact, at this growth rate, it takes 1,400 years for GDP per capita to double. So I alluded to the idea that as economies mature, they often appear as if they are going to grow at more or less the same rates. And what we see here, looking at these Asian tigers, is that does seem to have been happening with South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. And so this is a plot of what growth rates or what's happening to GDP per capita in the years since these economies started to grow rapidly. And what you see here is that India and China, which started to grow rapidly well after these other countries, are catching up. Okay, so to summarize, growth rates vary quite dramatically across countries and across time within a country. Some countries seem to always have positive growth, and some others, sadly enough, seem to have consistently negative economic growth. I didn't show you this data, but there's a positive correlation between the rate of investment and output per capita. There's a negative correlation between the rate of population growth and output per capita. There's no tendency for poor countries to grow more rapidly than rich countries. And there is a tendency for rich countries to converge to nearly the same level of per capita income. So what we'll do now is turn to some theoretical models that will help us understand these growth facts.